Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter. In the past few days, I've made a few comments on the community feature of this YouTube channel, voicing my support for Black Lives Matter, trying to explain why all lives matter as a knee-jerk reaction is wrong, and just voice the frustration and anger that I'm feeling. My intentions were never anything more than to help signal boost. The more people who are talking about this and being vocal about their feelings on it, the better. After all, I live here in Japan and I just can't go outside and join a protest, which I would do if I was living in the United States. The movement is more than just about the murder of George Floyd. The Black Lives Matter organization was formed years ago, but the movement to eradicate white supremacy and put an end to the injustice, discrimination, and violence against black communities has always been there. When it comes to racism and injustice, there is a nasty history of cases that show that in the eyes of the judicial system, black lives do not matter as much. Countless cases of unarmed black people being shot and the shooter gets off with almost nothing, targeting of black people for nonviolent crimes, the unfair sentencing of black people in the judicial system and the lack thereof when it comes to white people for the same crime, the shooting of unarmed black people by the police, the very people who are supposed to protect them. The list goes on and on. Black Lives Matter recognizes that all lives matter, of course they do, but black lives are being valued and treated far less, so it's calling that out and saying, hey, Black Lives Matter too. This isn't only Black Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter more, so to respond to the desperate plea that, hey, Black Lives Matter with, no, all lives matter, is like walking into a speech at someone else's funeral when they're talking about how much that deceased person meant, and screaming, hey, what about other people who died, huh? They're missed as well. It's just ridiculous. I remember when the footage of the beating of Rodney King was on TV when I was like 11 years old. I remember being disgusted then, and then with the age of smartphones and cameras, you'd think that that would decrease, but it's not. It's really exposing the insane amounts of brutality that black people face from the police, both on and off camera. But even when more and more cases of this type of violence is being unmasked publicly, and even when filmed, the resulting lack of justice remains the same. This is a boiling point. The protests aren't about just one or two cases. This is a daily reality for many black people, and enough is enough. Things have to change. I like the opinion piece by Neil deGrasse Tyson, which I'll put a link for in the description down below, in which he goes into his personal feelings on the topic, and he has some good suggestions for policy experts to consider. First, and I think we can all agree with this, that police training needs to be longer and more thorough. It needs to cover more diverse topics like cultural awareness and training on how not to use lethal force. We can tell from the protests alone that the police are just resorting to violence way too fast, and this goes into Neil's second recommendation, which is that police officers should be tested for any implicit bias that they carry. After all, the bias that they carry can mean life or death for others. It's also obvious that proper ramifications aren't in place either. We hear of cases of cops brutalizing somebody, and when everyone looks into it, they discover that that cop had had like dozens of reports filed against them. And it's not just the police though. I understand that a lot of them are good and they have a tough job. But there has to be a system in place to better train them and to make sure that bad apples do not get in the bunch because it will spoil it. On top of that, though, is the judicial system, and it needs massive fixing. It is ridiculous that a white college student can get 3 months for raping an unconscious woman, while black people are getting thrown in prison for nonviolent petty crimes, and in some cases even killed. I encourage all of you to look into the issues that people are protesting against so that you can better understand it. The hashtag Black Lives Matter is a great source for finding more info, like their official website, which also includes pages outlining how you can help donate to organizations that are fighting against injustice. I'm also going to put a link to a video down in the description down below called Brown Eye, Blue Eye. It's a fantastic racial exercise by Jane Elliott, who's a fantastic speaker against racism, and I think you'll find it interesting if you haven't seen it already. Now, I want to take a few minutes to address some of the more negative responses I saw on my post because I feel that it has to be said. First, being quote-unquote political on this channel. Look, I understand and respect that people have a lot of stress in their daily lives. They hear outcry about social issues and more on social media. When they come to YouTube, it's to escape, if only for a brief period. This is why if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see a very different side of me. One that posts and shares about Monster Hunter and games, but one that is also not afraid to be outspoken when it comes to politics. I tweet a lot, so I don't blame you if you don't follow me there. But not saying anything here on my channel was eating at my soul. I am passionately against racism, so during a countrywide protest against it, to remain absolutely silent about it on this channel felt almost strategic. I realized that I wasn't trying to respect escapism, but like most people on YouTube, I knew that it would piss off a lot of people if I said anything non-game related. But who the hell am I as a person if I start letting that dictate if, when, and how I speak up against something? So I made a few posts. I don't understand how standing up for human rights is a political thing. Maybe the word political is just too generalized these days. No human being should find it offensive the idea that racism is bad and that black lives should not matter less than others. I simply cannot see how this is a controversial statement. Second, virtue signaling. This is a case of damned if you do and damned if you don't. I get accused of making a statement in order to look good and that I'm just riding on a trend. First off, almost none of you actually know me as a person, and if you did, you'd know that I've always spoken out against racism, sexism, and injustice. There is no way to convince someone that you're speaking up with good intentions, and I hope that that fear of being accused of virtue signaling won't deter any of you from speaking up as well. The protests are made to spread awareness, get the conversations happening, and to make those in power uncomfortable so that they might actually see some change. Signal boosting is a helpful way that some of us can help out. I'm here physically in Japan, so I cannot join a protest. What I can do is educate myself more on the subject so that I can be more aware, help raise awareness amongst those who follow me online by showing my support for the movement, and to donate to organizations that are on the ground and making a difference. I'm doing all of those, which is the best that I can do. So I turn to the haters and I ask, are you doing the most that you can do? Third and finally, this whataboutism. I'm not even going to respond to whataboutism comments. It's stupid. I say Black Lives Matter and someone says, well, why aren't you speaking out against the situation in Hong Kong or human rights violations in this country? All I can say to that is stay on the subject. There are tons of things that people should be upset about and talk about, but trying to use this tactic when someone is talking about one thing and just trying to bring up another, instead of just engaging with the topic, it's not constructive and it only muddles the conversation. And that's where I'm going to leave things. Again, I have some helpful links in the description down below for resources on learning about the issue, as I know that depending on where you are in the world, this subject may feel a little bit more foreign to you. And it's good to have places to know that you can donate to that you know are legitimate. I decided not to turn off monetization for this video, and while I do not think it'll make much money from ad revenue at all, any that it does make will be 100% donated to an organization working to fight for Black Lives Matter. All I could do is say that we've never seen a protest movement this large in terms of scale when it comes to standing up against the injustice against black lives, and we cannot let this become a trend that just sizzles out. We need change. I'll continue to be vocal, and I hope you will be as well. Black Lives Matter.